Stay tuned. You're going to learn the 3 most ridiculous things that you can do to capture and hold someone's attention. Yes, that was a very clickbait introduction, and it is there to illustrate something called loops. Loops are incredibly useful and very interesting. This whole conversation came about when someone in an internet group was talking about an upcoming book by someone I know whose name is Chase Hughes. Now, if you don't know Chase Hughes, his upcoming book is fiction, but he is also the author of this book, Amazon link down below. And in this book, the Ellipsis Manual, and his upcoming book, he peppers throughout the book coordinates, GPS coordinates in various forms and in this Facebook forum, the question came about, what do these coordinates mean? Well, Chase does this very intentionally and very strategically. They create a sense of curiosity. They make you want to look into it more. Now, I had to do my own research. In fact, I had to ask him about some of these coordinates, and they are relevant to some of the strange stuff he talks about in the Ellipsis Manual. And to understand what a loop is part of a story, as best to understand it, in which a question is raised, and that's called opening the loop, and then the answer is given. That's called closing the loop. By presenting these interesting coordinates throughout his book, he creates curiosity. He makes you want more. And the curiosity does not get perfectly fulfilled, which only makes you more and more curious. I'm going to describe here in a moment the various kinds of loops and how you can use them and where you see them in everyday life. The closed loop. A closed loop is very common. It simply consists of raising a question and then answering it. A good example of a closed loop is in your local newscast, in which you hear the news anchor say, "Coming back after these messages, we'll tell you how to prevent fire in your kitchen," or something like that. And it causes you to wait for the answer. And of course, this is done very intentionally because they want you to sit through the commercials, because they're getting a lot of money to have you sit through these commercials. And then they answer the question at the return of the broadcast, but every time before they go to a commercial, they open a loop by saying what's going to happen next, like coming up next, Bob will tell you about the weather and how you can withstand the terrible heat that's coming. And then they'll go to a commercial, and then they'll have the weather. And it'll go all the way through an entire news broadcast. Now, there's a benefit to understanding and using closed loops. They give you a sense of satisfaction. A good example of someone who uses, or at least has used, closed loops a lot, in the past at least, is Tony Robbins. He will tell you, I'm going to give you the 6 ways in which you can better improve your communication skills. And he gives you 6 ways, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because you have these 6 ways of doing it, you feel like you have all the answers. Now, this is true also of the Jeff Stevens hypnosis training method, which I sell. It is a 10-step process. And what you discover, what you learn as you go through this 10-step process is to go through a hypnosis process. There are 10 steps that if you go through them, you have basically completed the whole process. And it makes it very easy to learn, and something that I noticed when I started practicing it and teaching it is you felt like you didn't need any more. And that's actually a good feeling. It's not necessarily the most useful feeling, but you feel like you have the answers, or at least enough of the answers to really continue and in this case be a good hypnotist. If you use this a lot, one of the things that, going back to Tony Robbins, you will find is people feel as though he gives them all the answers. They feel completely satisfied with every piece of information that they give him because he creates a complete closing of all the loops, and so they don't feel as though they need to go any further. Consider that if you're answering questions. Now, we're going to talk in a moment about the other types. An open loop is when the question is asked but not perfectly satisfying answers are given to it. Now, a good example of this, and it's used very strategically, is when you hear a marketer say something like, I'm going to give you the 4 most important ways to accomplish all your business goals. And he'll go into 1, 2, and 3, and then he'll lead off without actually making you feel you got a 4th one. But you think maybe there was a 4th one in there and you didn't quite listen hard enough. Consider that, because leaving that open loop makes you want to learn more. So if you're writing marketing emails or making marketing promotions, consider about how to leave open loops so that people feel more curious. Remember that an open loop and a closed loop create 2 different feelings, and it's important. You can manage these. By opening a loop and closing it, you create a feeling of satisfaction. By opening a loop and not closing it, like starting a story that doesn't have an end, it tends to create a desire to want more. Now that you have some understanding of open loops and closed loops, there's some really tricky things you can do, very advanced stuff that is called loops within loops within loops. And essentially what a loop within a loop within a loop is a story that's inside another story that's inside another story. And the central story has a message or even a direct instruction. What this will do is it will fade the memory of this direct instruction of that most important seed center part of the story, and it will take it on unconsciously. Let me give you a little illustration. So I drew this up. So first of all, you start with a story of a person, and then you just stop and you begin a second story of maybe a different person, and then you stop and then you give the direct instruction. Maybe it is you sincerely want to study, or you are very interested in these products, or something like that. Then you close that second story by completing the story, giving it a conclusion. Then you complete the first story. And what you have to do is design 3 stories with the central story being the most important message, the things you want to directly implant in their subconscious mind. I have been a witness to this, and it does tend to create a sense of confusion as to what this person's doing, because he's starting off on a story, then he goes into a completely different tangent, and then he tells another story, and then he goes off on a completely different tangent. And he says some things, then he completes that last tangent. And you feel like, okay, I saw where he was going. And then he completes the first tangent. And then you realize, okay, that's the whole story. What you remember are the stories, the loops within the loops. And it does have a very profound and dramatic effect. So consider how you might tell a story, a loop within a loop within a, and then have a direct command, something that's really important, and then close the loop and then close the first loop again. I think a good example of closing the loop is considering how at the beginning of this video I had my hat on, and so I put my hat on again and the loop is closed. You've got this information. It's incredibly valuable. What I'd like you to do is, if you have questions about this, I would love the conversation. Leave comments below, email me if you like. Go to my website, Mind Control Publishing. I have a lot of information about influence, persuasion, mind control, hypnosis. There are some links below. 2 of those links are going to be to Chase Hughes's books. I highly recommend them if you're interested in influence, persuasion, mind control. He is an incredibly skilled and talented author. So check out those links below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Take care. Bye.